Good evening. At 6 o'clock, I'll call this meeting to order. Roll call. All present, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item C, identify possible conflicts of interest. Seeing none, move on to item D. Item D, public comment period, correspondence. Now, if I trip up, it's because this is something brand new since I've been here. I could do this with my eyes shut. Now I have to actually read it. So if something's not right, please correct me. At this time, I will recognize persons in attendance wishing to address the council. Upon recognition by me, persons may address the council, first stating their name and address. Comments will be limited to no more than 5 minutes, and persons are asked to be respectful when addressing the council. No action will be taken regarding items not on the agenda. However, the council will take comments from the public under advisement. Please note that council members will not respond to your comments or questions. Are there any public comments? Are there any public comments? Seeing no public comments, move on to item E, approval of minutes, November 26th meeting, 2024. We have a motion by Alderman Giles, second by Alderman Tompkins. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Rigel?
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you. Staff updates. Comments from Jill Porter, Library Director.
Thank you, Mayor. Given the feedback the library has received in the past 10 days or so regarding our comment that the library will not be open on Sundays beginning in January, I thought I'd take a moment to address the council and also the members of the public about how we got to that point. First of all, I'll start with the budget constraints. In 2025, we were allotted our 2024 amount. 2024 amount minus our expected 2025 wages and benefits. Since wages and benefits go up every year, city departments, including the library, were already working behind the 8 ball when we got started. Second, inflation. Just like the rest of us, inflation has impacted everything we purchase, from books to sidewalk salt. Third, wages and benefits. As mentioned, these go up every year, and if they don't, as we've experienced in the past, we lose good employees to employers paying market rates. 4, lastly, we saw the end of grant funding. For the past 3 years, the library has benefited from a large sliding scale grant that provided us with a much needed circulation system and reduced annual fees for that service. This grant saved us nearly $100,000, and much of that cost would have been in a capital improvement plan line item, e.g. taxpayer funded, if we hadn't received that grant. But the unfortunate side effect of receiving this grant is that this has artificially lowered our operating expenses for the past 3 years. It's obviously benefited the city and taxpayers, but is now very much hurting the library. So what was the impact of these 4 items to the library budget? Well, it left us with an $88,000 deficit. And the only way that the bulk of that deficit could be met, as we've cut everything to the bare bone already, was to cut staff hours, including cutting a full-time equivalent and losing the skill sets of that person or persons have developed over time. More importantly to the taxpayers, this staff reduction impacts the services we can provide. We are already stretched thin at times in regard to staffing in the library. And with 40 fewer hours of staffing each week, this unfortunately is where the Sunday hours came in. As council members know from the statistics I have shared in the past, Sunday hours were not a random choice. Sunday hours are by far our slowest of the week. For example, this past Sunday, 99 people came through the door in 4 hours. Not terrible, but a typical weekday afternoon could see 2 to 3 times that many within the same time frame. With advances in technology, students do not rely on us the way they used to, and there are more options for recreation for community members. We are also the only member within our 54 library, South Central Library System north of Dane County that has Sunday hours. Not Marathon County, not Portage County, not Wisconsin Rapids. Our library had no desire to follow their lead because we know that for a slice of our community, Sunday hours are an important service. But this is the reality we're living in. Inflation has gone up over 12% over the past 3 years, while the library's budget has only gone up 3% during that same time period. This is not sustainable, not by a long shot. I don't envy the position this council is in, and I hold none of you to blame for our cuts. But we as a city, the Common Council, staff, and public need to determine our priorities and take the actions necessary to reduce further cuts. As the mayor has said many times before, the community needs to make its voices heard. So I encourage everyone who is upset about the cuts to the library, the cuts to the other departments, please participate in these activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill, for all that information, and thank you for your comments. That will be definitely noticed and noted. Reminder of December 17th meeting schedule.
Thank you, Mayor. It's going to be slightly different than I expected because we have shifted, and we've run this by your Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee members and Judiciary and License members, trying to move that up a little bit because it appears that the JL meeting will be fairly short, and the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee meeting next Tuesday will not be short at all. So what we've gone to is for the JL meeting, that will be at 4:45, Finance, Budget, and Personnel at 5 o'clock, and then the other two will be the same as it was before. Plan Commission at 6 and Council at 7. Just a reminder that this year we're putting Plan Commission in front of Council, which we haven't done in the past, simply because the items on Plan Commission that way can be approved at the Council meeting and not wait 4 weeks until the next regular meeting on January 14th to get the blessing to move forward. So again, 4:45 for JL, 5 o'clock for Finance, Budget, and Personnel, 6 o'clock for the Plan Commission, and 7 o'clock for Council next week. And that will be really our wrap up of meetings for 2024, unless something out of the ordinary occurs. That's all I have.
Thank you, Steve. Mayor's comments, I have two this evening. First off, hello all. We found the ordinance number 1148, 2-10-2009 about displaying the American flag, and it reads as follows. I'm going to read it exactly as it follows. The mayor may, at his or her discretion, order the city American flag to be flown at half-mast on the death of any prominent citizen of the community, state, or nation. That is the ordinance as read. I would ask for all departments to please participate in flying your American flag at half-mast tomorrow, Wednesday, December 11th, sunup to sundown, in honor of District 5 Alderman Ed Wagner. Thank you. Second, I again, as always, encourage all of you to go to the top of the homepage on the city website and click on the circle with the envelope. There are two options, either email or text. I receive both. This way I do not miss anything. This will give you information about the budget, the appointments, etc., events, and various other things that are happening in the city. I have had people comment they did not know about things happening, obviously with the budget, as Jill pointed out. Maybe had they known or shared this with other people, maybe more people would have came to the meeting, which would have been absolutely dynamite, because we want to hear from everybody in the city if they can make it, or send an email or give us a call. This will give you more information about the city. I encourage you to please share with everyone that you know. This way we will have lots more information about the city. Oh, first off, we need to do it first. So hopefully everyone has done that. Again, very simple. Just click that little envelope inside the circle and everything will be much easier. The city communication department does a great job with telling us things that happen. The parade was this last Thursday. I can't tell how many people did not know. But we had a parade in Marshfield Thursday night. Been going for 27 years. So this is just one little thing. So please, everybody, tell 5 of your friends. Maybe they'll tell 5 of their friends. This is something that we as a city have the freedom to do as a free. We don't have to pay for this. It's something that I feel, should do just to keep ourselves informed, because not everybody knows. Once again, at the top of the city website page, click the circle with the envelope and sign up for either email or texting. Please share with your friends, and thank you. Item H, council comments. Seeing none. Item I, city administrator's update.
Thank you. Just a couple of things, and they pertain to items on the council agenda tonight under consent. Actually, I want to add to what the mayor said about the flag. I do apologize. For a long time, I've been here, and I think maybe some other staff members have been here, and believed that the flag can only be lowered at the direction of the governor. And I had never seen section 2.08 until this came up. So going forward, you've got it, I put it on your desk tonight. You can see that at the discretion of the mayor, the flag may be lowered for, things like what happened with Councilmember Wagner or other types of incidents as sees fit that could honor somebody that way. The two things I was going to mention for consent agenda, though, first of all, in Finance, Budget, and Personnel on December 3rd, Councilmember Tompkins raised a question about whether or not we had differential fees on this fee schedule, whether you're a resident or non-resident. I checked with all of the affected department heads, and in no cases, whether it be building permits, city clerk's office, finance, fire department, are there differential fees. We do have differential fees in other services, like if you go to Band-Aid Waters, you pay more if you're a non-resident than if you're a resident. But what we did agree to at that night is to look at this early in 2025 and look at all the fees we have and see whether or not there's merit to looking at perhaps adding some differential in some cases for resident versus non-resident. The other thing I want to note, if you were at Finance, Budget, and Personnel at the last meeting, I did bring forward an annual contract with SCH for the services of Price Hembrook, the planning services that we get from that consulting firm. But in retrospect, after it was recommended for approval tonight, I did see a conflict with the city's procurement policy, so I hit the pause button on that one. And next week, you'll see 3-month contracts to start 2025 with both SCH for planning and Cedar Corporation for Economic Development. And during the early part of those first couple of months of 2025, we'll be doing an RFP for those services. And that's all I have this evening.
Thank you, Steve. Item J, reports from commissions, boards, and committees. Seeing none, move on to item K, consent agenda, meeting minutes, reports. Motion by Alderman Giles, second by Alderman Spiros. Alderman Stalbert.
Administrator Bark, thank you for the comment about city fee schedules, resolution 2024-46. Would it be appropriate, I'd be glad to make a motion to send that back to committee so that we could further evaluate the differential opportunity. Send it back to the finance committee at their next meeting or the meeting following.
If people are looking at me, I guess if they're looking at me, I might as well comment. I would prefer not to do that. And the reason why is because we want to get this out on the website as of January 1st for contractors and citizens to use. My preference would be that we look at it in January and February and we can modify it from there if we want to add additional fee to non-residents for some of those. But it's up to this body what you want to do. I just can't recommend that personally, and being that we're sitting here in December.
Okay, and just so I'm clear then, if we postpone till early 2025, then we will have not be able to implement until the following year, like 2026?
I think we could probably modify in midstream. It's a resolution now. It's no longer an ordinance. So we could come along in February of 2025 and say we want to bump these fees up. The ones that we're talking about, though, just to let you know, are generally fees, unlike the pool, where you're getting a building permit or you're getting whatever. Typically, we're not talking about resident versus non-resident issues in some of those. But I think it's worth looking at. But I will, to answer your question, we could certainly amend it anytime we want to for any of the fees that we find it's warranted.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Mr. Rigel?
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you. And we can skip item L, action on items removed from the consent agenda. Item M, first reading of ordinance number 1523, amending chapter 5-51 of the Marshfield Municipal Code, pet licensing, presented by Steve Bark, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this one kind of dovetails onto the fee schedule issue that we just talked about. When we started the fee schedule back in 2016, just a real brief history for those who are not on the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee. I guess you've already heard it before from me last week. But Jason Angel was the Director of Development Services. His thought was, let's take it out of the ordinances where we have to do first readings and second readings. It's kind of cumbersome every time we want to change a fee. And just create an annual resolution that we can put the fee out there on the web and everybody can see it. And then we can change it just once a year based upon inflation, based upon increasing cost of staff processing, whatever. And over time, it was actually Jason's vision to do this. Over time, we added on other departments. We have a one-stop shopping. So you're looking for fees, you can just scroll down looking for whatever type of fee you want to find and find the 2025 number. But the one we're talking about in this ordinance is having to do with dog and cat licenses. And that has always been in ordinance in chapter 9. So in order to add that to the fee schedule effective 1/1/25, which we're proposing. We'd like your approval to adopt ordinance to do that. If you look back at, Jordan Munger did some great staff work on this, and he went back to 2012, which appears to be the last time that some of these fees were increased, almost 40% increase since that time. Now, 40%, you know, if you think about it, in a dog or cat license at $8 or $10, 40% is not big money, but it was time to amend those. So he did a survey of roughly 20 communities, and he took kind of the averages of where they're at. And that led to the increases that you see on, I think it's page 3 of, on page 3 of the ordinance before you. So what that would do is get it caught up. You would approve the second reading next Tuesday, and then that fee schedule that just included those fees would then become effective on 1/1/25, taking into effect those animal license fees. And the numbers appear to be, like I said, commensurate with what most communities are charging in average. And it's first reading, so we're not looking for any action tonight, but I would take any questions about this proposal.
Any questions from the council? Alderman Tompkins?
Steve, Mr. Rigel had said when we were looking at this with finance, budget, and personnel, he had asked about putting in police fees. So is that something that will also be looked at in January?
We could certainly do that, yeah, because I think those are in ordinance as well. We could try and find out what fees we have that are in ordinance form now that would benefit from being added on to the annual resolution and posted. I'm not sure what they all are, but that could be a possibility with law enforcement.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we will vote in 2 weeks, or actually next week, the
Correct.
17th.
Correct.
Oh boy. Item N, first reading of ordinance number 1524, amending chapter 8-44 of the Marshfield Municipal Code, school buses and school crossing guards, presented by Harold Wolfgram, City Attorney.
This ordinance change really came at the request of the police chief. It changes the location where buses stop to be consistent with what state statute is. Our previous ordinance, probably at election at one point in time by the Common Council, allowed buses to stop in such a way that in the middle of a block in a business district, you'd end up having the flag go out or the stop sign go out on the bus, and then traffic in both directions would have to stop. With this, and again, it's consistent with state statute, we wouldn't be having that. It really did create a situation where sometimes people weren't expecting it to happen because it wasn't consistent with state statute, and it sort of created an issue with respect to traffic. So beyond that, if there are questions, I'm going to defer to the chief in terms of the specific, if there is an actual traffic issue, but I don't think it really does make sense to just be consistent with statute.
Any questions, comments? Seeing none, we will revisit this next week, December 17th. Item O, request to approve resolution number 2024-49, changing calculation method of public fire protection charge, presented by Nicholas Cum, General Manager, Marshfield Utilities.
Thank you. Good evening. So tonight we're going to talk about public fire protection, or PFP is how I'll reference it as I go through my remarks. So PFP is related to the infrastructure and maintenance cost of the water utility for additional capacity that's required to supply large volumes of water during fires. This includes, but not limited to, larger water mains, wells, our treatment facilities, our storage facilities, hydrants, and the list goes on of things that are larger in order to accommodate that additional water. Just to be clear, there's no relationship between this fee and the structure and the fire department and what the chief and all the firefighters provide. It's a completely separate. This funding is just for the infrastructure related to the water utility. PFP costs and rates are determined by the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin from a cost of service study. The Public Service Commission of Wisconsin has provided us with proposed rates, and that's what's being presented this evening. The reason for this review of PFP charge method is due to the timing of us being a part of a water rate case currently, and due to the property reassessment that happened back in 2023, which caused a shift, if you remember, from the non-residential to residential in overall property values. So instead of just moving forward and keep doing what we've been doing in the past, we felt it was appropriate for us to review other methods to ensure that the most appropriate or desired method was being used going forward. And while the PSC sets the rates that we actually charge the customers, locally we get to determine the method by which those rates are charged. PFP can be charged through various methods, with by far the most popular currently being the water meter size method in Wisconsin. Additional methods include the assessed property value, which is what we've been using currently, the service size, and the square footage method. As noted in the memo that I provided in the packet, service size is generally, in most situations, equal to meter size, and therefore really not worth the additional effort to set up, since the information is already there for meter size. And then as we tried to develop a model for square footage last year, we experienced a number of issues trying to find square footage values, especially for some of the tax exempt properties, and determining what spaces that should be included in when you consider square footage. You know, when you look at a home, you have a basement. Some of the basements are finished. Should all those areas be included or should they not be included in the calculation? You have porches, decks, crawl spaces, garden sheds, mezzanines, and the list goes on. And it really would take a lot of effort to figure out what should and what shouldn't be. So that makes the square footage method as complicated, or maybe even more complicated than the assessed property value method that we're using currently. In the memo information, I described some of the challenges that we currently have with administration of the assessed property value method we experience currently. You know, these challenges include timing issues. They require the splitting of values of property based on the number of meters that might be at the location. The reassessment timing based on the property type and the fact that residential is done at the city level, whereas manufacturing is done at the state level on a more frequent basis generally. And then development has to happen for assessed values for tax exempt properties, since that's not, you know, there's not a property tax component there. So we have to get a value set up so that we're able to provide a fire protection charge because of that. And overall, it's a pretty labor intensive process, which increases the risk of error. In the state of Wisconsin, there are 361 of the approximate 570 water utilities bill public fire protection as a direct charge to the water utility. The remainder bill their public fire protection through their property taxes or a combination of their property and water bill. Prior to 2005, it was something in the city that was actually done through the tax bill, and in 2005, it reverted to the water bill. Of those 361 utilities, 17 currently use the property assessed value or assessed value method, which is what we use. 15 of them use service size, 3 of them use square footage, and the remaining 326 bill PFP based on the water meter size method. Neighboring communities like Plover and Stevens Point and Wausau and Wisconsin Rapids all use the meter method. And I should note that during my prep for tonight's meeting, I noticed there was a typo in the memo that I had in your packet. Stevens Point, Wausau, and Plover all have rates that are less than what is proposed for Marshfield. And Wisconsin Rapids have nearly identical to what's being proposed in Marshfield. And some of the reasons there's differences, different communities. In Stevens Point and Wausau, you're looking at more individuals per mile, if you will, square mile. So there's more consumers to absorb the cost as part of it. And in Plover, they're geographic. They're very flat. They have sand. And in Marshfield, we are more clay, so we have more wells and more infrastructure that way. We also have 2 pressure zones because of the up in the clinic is a higher elevation, and that creates us to have 2 pressure zones, and that's why we have 4 elevated storage tanks, whereas in Plover, they probably only have 2. So some of those factors play into why their cost is less, and the reason the reasons why theirs are less. Excuse me. So the Utility Commission met last night and approved a recommendation to the Common Council that we switch to the water meter method. Due to the history around this change, and how it was moved from the annual tax bill to the water bill a number of years ago, and how the previous approval by the Common Council was prescriptive in specifying a method type, being the property assessed value. Any change going forward would require the Common Council to approve. I could likely spend a few hours reviewing all the information that was provided. In the end, if you try to select a method based on rates and financial impact, you'll likely struggle considerably. At the end of the day, customers, no matter which method is chosen, is going to see a change in one way or another. And please understand, I'm not trying to diminish the impact of rates on any of our customers. Obviously, we're mindful of that in this process. In the end, staff believes that the meter method provides the customer with the clearest price signal, as the rate is a fixed amount. It matches what most of the neighboring utilities are using, and it also removes that administrative complexity of the assessed value method. In general, switching to the meter method will have the greatest impact on residential properties with the lowest assessed value, or those apartment buildings where we are taking a bigger number and dividing it amongst the units. I would note, though, that in some of those rental properties, the newer ones especially, those rental rates are, higher than what we're seeing for mortgage rates to some degree. So it's not really scaled appropriately. Businesses in general will see a varying degree of change based on how their assessed value compares to their water meter size. So that concludes my remarks and welcome discussion and question. And I would recommend approval of resolution 2024-49.
I have a motion by Alderman Stauber, second by Alderman Fire. Any questions or comments for Nick?
If I could. My motion, Mayor, would be to, and Nick, you mentioned it, thanks for the presentation, a lot of information. My motion is simply to hold over until our next meeting so we have time to digest this. Not to take any action tonight, give us a week to go through the 100 pages that we have.
If you click the links, I think it's close to 400 or 500, but yes.
Okay. And I also have a request, so unless there's any discussion, I'll put my request on the table now. And the request would be, I would like to see what the impact is. So, for example, if you could select 3 churches, 3 of the top users in manufacturing, 3 of the top users in institution schools, I would like to see, really what the net impact is. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, generally it looks like a good idea, other people are doing it, but I'm concerned that it may have a negative impact for economic development, for example, just as one example. But kind of like to see where the tire hits pavement, what the dollar impact is. If you could just give us unnamed examples, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, and I would mention, I think last night, Ms. Tompkins asked a question, is it related to economic development? And if you look at some of the information I did provide, you'll notice that especially in the larger size water services, the 2, 4, and 6 inch, 2, 3, 4, and 6 inch, generally the assessed value is much higher than what the meter charge would be. So it would actually be a benefit in those particular situations. But we could definitely pull together sample sets, if you will. Just keep in mind, it's a little bit of a challenge, especially when you look at maybe an industrial customer, for instance, that has 5 water meters, and they have they may have a small footprint, so their assessed value is low, versus the next neighbor might have a huge assessed value. So there's a lot of variability here. And I've tried to show that a little bit in the graphs, and the fact that you go across the spectrum, you have some that'll see an increase and some that'll see a decrease.
I appreciate that. So maybe you just add some qualifiers, try to come up with the norm, I guess, and say, hey, this might be an anomaly. And that one you mentioned might be the anomaly. Small footprint, multiple meters or something like that.
Sure.
Thanks, Nick.
And Alderman Fire, are you okay seconding that motion? Is there a second to that motion?
Oh.
Alderman Weigel seconds the motion. Alderman Tompkins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I'm just wondering, when you were speaking, when a fire hydrant is used and there's like a certain volume of water that's used, does the cost of that water come out of this fee?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any water that's used for a fire or any training purposes by the fire department staff is incorporated into this fee.
If a lot of water wasn't used in a year, would there be a rebate or a credit back to people?
I'd have to go look at the PSC to see exactly what's incorporated for water, but keep in mind that a gallon of water costs a half a penny. So 2 gallons is a penny. So it takes quite a bit of water to actually get a large financial amount.
Thank you.
Alderman Varsho?
What about hydrant flushing then?
That's
Something that gets charged back to the residents then as well with this formula? If they're flushing the hydrants? You don't have to tell me now, Nick. It's fine if we're going to come back next week. It's just, I didn't think about it until she said that. If the fire department's using one to put out a fire and then, you get an email from the utility say, hey, we're going to flush, hydrant flush. Well, then am I going to get or not?
Yeah, as I was thinking about it, the flushing is more from an operational perspective and providing clean quality water, and it's not related to a fire component. So I don't think it's a part of the public fire protection. It's more of an operation and maintenance, normal cost.
Perfect, thank you.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor, and Russ explained that. Jess, would you please just give us that motion one more time before we make our vote?
Yeah, a motion and a second to delay the approval of resolution number 2024-49 to the December 17th meeting to allow additional time to review the materials.
Thank you. Please vote.
Mr. Weigel?
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Request to approve 2025 insurance rewards presented by Jennifer Solinsky, Finance Director. Excuse me, renewals. Rewards. Yeah. Wow.
There you go.
Good evening. And as I'm standing here, my PDF went blank.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, it's back. Each year at about this time, we go through our annual renewal process. In your packet, I provided a summary of, by policy, where those changes are occurring. The city does receive its insurance through the League of Wisconsin Municipalities, with workers' comp being underwritten by United Heartland. The exception to that, property is underwritten by Municipal Property Insurance Corporation, and the airport is actually underwritten by Tricor. Since last year, we will see about a 4% increase in our renewals. Some of that is coming from workers' compensation, where we did have a little decrease in our rating. However, with the increases in salaries, that does result in an increase in the premium. The other slightly offset by public officials, where the piece that was attributable to Marshfield Utilities has been carved out and billed to them directly. And then the other increase we are seeing is in property. As the value of our property goes up, the amount to insure it will also increase. So with that, I would recommend Common Council approve the 2025 insurance premiums as presented and authorize me to execute those renewals.
We have a motion by Alderman Spiro, second by Alderman Varsho. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Weigel?
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item Q, appointment of Jennifer Coran, 2500 South Oak Avenue to the Business Improvement District to fill an unexpired term ending in April of 2026. We have a motion by Alderman Varsho, second by Alderman Giles. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Weigel?
Aye.
That motion passes. Thank you. Item R, appointment of Brandon Taylor, 219 West 26th Street to the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Committee to fill an unexpired term ending in April 2026. No action taken at this meeting, but next meeting we will vote on approving him on the Park, Recreation, and Forestry Committee. Item S, suggested items for future agendas. Alderman Tompkins?
I'm just wondering if we could get an update on dates when the council could meet for our strategic plan. Hopefully in January.
Yep.
Any other items for further agendas? Seeing none, who would like to adjourn the meeting? Alderman Weigel? And who'd like to second that? I see nothing. Alderman Spiros? And Alderman Tompkins. Please vote to adjourn the meeting. Gee, that worked.
Yeah.
Mr. Weigel?
Very well.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.